Two police cars tore straight into my ranch yard, red dust swirling up like a small storm. A woman stood in the flashing lights, pointed directly at me, and said, 30 days, clear this place out, or I'll see you in court. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, hands still covered in dirt, my old boots pressing into the familiar gravel, and looked past her. Not at the woman in the perfect white dress and expensive black sunglasses. I looked toward the weathered wooden fences, where my father used to stand for hours under the sun, fixing every rusted nail one by one. She thought this was just land. She didn't understand. This was legacy. Her name was Vanessa Crowley, the new HOA president of Silver Creek Estates, less than a quarter mile from my ranch. The kind of woman who, in under a year, had turned an entire neighborhood into a rulebook longer than a military code. And now, she had brought the HOA to my doorstep. One of the officers stepped out of the car, his eyes moving from me to Vanessa. "Ma'am, what's going on here?" Vanessa didn't even look at him. She kept her eyes on me, a thin smile cutting across her face. "He's operating an illegal commercial business that's affecting our residential community," she said, her voice cold and precise. "We've sent multiple notices." He ignored them. I took a slow breath. Not because I was afraid, because I knew exactly where this was going. I turned to the officer, my voice calm. "Sir, I have never received any legal notice from the authorities, and this land has never been part of any HOA." Vanessa let out a soft laugh, one with no warmth in it. "That doesn't matter," she said. "Any activity that affects our residents falls under HOA authority." That was the first time I really looked at her, truly looked. This woman believed that, not pretending, not bluffing. She genuinely believed she had that kind of power. And that was the most dangerous part. The morning wind moved across the fields behind me, carrying the scent of dry grass and warm earth, the smell of years. My father bought this land back in the late 90s, when it was nothing but rough ground, rocks, and wild weeds. He was a veteran, a man of few words, a man who didn't argue much. But every time he put his hand on this land, he would say one thing: land doesn't betray the patient. I grew up here, learned how to fix fences before I learned how to drive, learned how to endure before I learned how to fight back. And now, a woman who had never shed a single drop of sweat on this soil was standing in front of me, telling me she was going to take it away. The other officer stepped closer, scanning the ranch. "Do you have permits for your operation?" "Everything is fully compliant," I said. "I can show you." Vanessa cut in, her voice sharper now. "We've documented noise, traffic, and inappropriate commercial activity. The HOA will proceed with legal action if necessary." I heard engines in the distance, familiar ones. Pickup trucks rolling in. My neighbors, people who had been coming here for years. Not because of rules, but because they loved this place. Vanessa heard them too. She turned, watched the trucks approaching, then looked back at me, her eyes colder than before. "You really think you can keep doing this?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the trucks, the people, the memories. Then I looked back at her. "You're mistaken about one thing," I said, my voice low and steady. She raised an eyebrow. "You think this is a fight about regulations." I took a step forward. "But you just stepped into a fight about ownership." Silence fell between us. The officer looked back and forth, sensing the shift, even if he didn't fully understand it. Vanessa didn't step back, but her smile was gone. "I'll be back," she said. "And next time, I won't need the police." I gave a small nod. "Neither will I." She turned, got into her car, the door slamming shut. The two police vehicles pulled away, leaving red dust hanging in the air. But I knew this was just the beginning. And what she didn't know was that I had faced things far worse than an HOA Karen. She thought I was just an old man holding on to land. She had no idea I learned how to fight, long before she ever learned how to control. My father bought this land with a decision everyone called crazy. He put every dollar he had into a dry, rocky piece of ground with no electricity, no water, and not a single person who believed anything could ever come from it. I still remember the day he signed the papers. The seller shook his head, gave a half smile like he was unloading something worthless. His friends said he was burying his money. Even my mother stayed silent the entire drive home. But my father didn't explain himself. He just said one thing. People see dirt. I see a future. Those first years were hell. Summers burned like fire. Winters cut through your skin. No modern equipment. No team. Just two hands, an old truck, and a will that refused to break. I was just a kid when he started waking me up before sunrise. We drove posts into the ground, stretched wire fence line by line, dug trenches for water. There were days my hands split open, blood soaking into the dirt, and I wanted to quit. But every time, he just looked at me. No yelling, no comforting, just a look, and I understood. Out here, you either endure or you disappear. By the 5th year, the land began to change. The grass grew greener. The soil softened. The livestock stopped resisting. People started stopping by. At first, out of curiosity. Then they bought things. Then they came back, bringing others with them. The ranch didn't just survive. It lived. When my father passed, he didn't leave much behind. No big money, no luxury assets. He left this land. And one sentence. Don't let anyone take it from you. I kept that promise. Until Vanessa Crowley showed up. Silver Creek Estates was built more than 10 years after my ranch. A clean neighborhood, white fences, houses so identical you could lose your place without even realizing it. They brought something we never needed. Rules. Their HOA controlled everything. Grass height, paint colors, even the exact size of the flag hanging in front of a house. And Vanessa, she didn't just follow those rules. She turned them into weapons. In less than a year, she had the entire neighborhood living in silence. One neighbor got fined for lights that were too bright. A family got warned for leaving their pickup truck in the driveway too long. A retired man was forced to remove his wind chimes because they were disrupting community quiet. I heard those stories like they were coming from a distant radio. Not my problem. Not my world. I was wrong. The first time her name entered my ranch was on a Tuesday afternoon. Jake, my son, walked into the office holding a letter. He didn't say a word, just set it down on the table. I opened it. HOA letterhead, embossed logo, cold rigid language. The message was clear. My ranch was being accused of excessive noise, traffic congestion, and negatively impacting the quality of life for residents of Silver Creek Estates. I was required to stop weekend events, reduce operating hours to before 4 in the afternoon, and submit a remediation plan within 30 days. Jake let out a short, sharp laugh. Who do they think they are? I didn't laugh. I read every line again. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I wanted to be sure this wasn't a joke. It doesn't apply to us, Jake said. We're not part of their HOA. I know. Then throw it away. I set the letter down. No, I said slowly. Not yet. Jake looked at me, confused. Why even care about this? I looked out the window. The fences, the fields, things that existed long before that HOA was ever drawn on a map. Because, I said, people like her don't send letters for fun. Jake went quiet. I picked up the phone. The call connected after 2 rings. Vanessa Crowley. Her voice came through, confident, cold. This is Daniel Brooks, I said. I received your letter. A brief pause. Not surprise. She was enjoying this. Yes, she said. I assume you've read it. I think there's a misunderstanding, I said, keeping my tone even. My property is not part of your HOA. Mr. Brooks, she cut in, her voice sharper now, our regulations apply to any activity that affects our residents. I tightened my grip slightly. That's not how the law works. Our legal counsel disagrees. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Then I asked, do you have any legal documentation that proves that authority? A pause. This time, a real one. We'll send it, she said. But I knew she didn't have it. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of an attack. And Vanessa Crowley had picked the wrong target. 3 days after that call, she showed up right at the entrance of my ranch, holding her phone up like a weapon, filming everything as if she were documenting a crime scene. Jake saw her first. He came out fast from the stables, his voice tightening. "You're not gonna believe this. She's filming." I stepped outside. The afternoon sun poured down onto the ground, heat rising in waves like the air itself was burning. And there she was, Vanessa Crowley, standing in the middle of the gravel road, her high heels sinking slightly into the dirt, but her eyes steady, unshaken. She didn't greet me, didn't ask a single question. She just started speaking. "Today, I am documenting an illegal operation that is severely impacting the residents of Silver Creek Estates." Her voice was clear, deliberate. Not meant for me. It was for the camera. Jake stepped forward. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Vanessa didn't even look at him. She swept the camera across the parking area, across the stables, across the people working. "I'm gathering evidence," she said, "for upcoming legal action." I walked toward her slowly. "No rush. No anger. You don't have the right to film on my property." That was when she turned the camera toward me. The lens was dark, like an eye with no emotion. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her smile returning, "everything here will be brought to light." I looked straight into the lens. "Then make sure you get it clearly," I said. "Film that sign too." I pointed toward the gate. A large wooden sign, old but clear. "Private property. No trespassing." Vanessa froze for a second. Just 1 second. But I saw it. Jake saw it. And the people behind me saw it too. She quickly regained her composure, lowering the camera slightly. "I'm not here as an individual," she said. "I represent the HOA." "I don't care who you represent," I replied. "You're standing on my land, without permission." The air grew heavy. Jake stood next to me, fists clenched. I knew he wanted to push her out right then and there. But I gave a slight shake of my head. "Not yet." Vanessa glanced around, as if calculating. Then she turned and took a few steps back. "We sent notices," she said. "And you ignored them." I responded. I said, "You have no authority." She smiled. "We'll see." And then she turned away. But not before raising the camera again, sweeping one more slow circle, as if making sure she had gathered enough evidence. That same afternoon, the video showed up in the Silver Creek Estates Facebook group. Jake was the one who showed it to me. "You need to see this." I don't like social media, but I watched. The video was edited, cut, rearranged. It focused on the crowd, the vehicles, the music. Vanessa's voice ran through it like a formal accusation. "This is what we deal with every weekend." The comments started pouring in. Some agreed, some questioned. But what mattered was this: it created noise. Not physical noise. Public noise. Jake threw the phone onto the table. "This is defamation. We should sue right now." I shook my head. "Not yet." "Not yet? Do you see what they're doing?" "I see it." I watched the video again. Not to get angry. To learn. Vanessa wasn't just attacking. She was building a narrative. And if I reacted the wrong way right now, I would become the villain in that story. That night, I sat alone on the porch. The air was cooler, carrying the smell of dirt and grass. Jake sat beside me, quiet for a long time. "You're not mad?" he finally asked. I looked out over the dark fields. "I am," I said. "But anger doesn't win fights." Jake let out a breath. "So what's the plan?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about Vanessa's eyes. The way she spoke. The way she believed she was in control. That wasn't random. That was habit. People like her don't stop. They escalate. And when they climb high enough, they make mistakes. "I'm waiting," I said. "For what?" I turned to Jake. "For her to go too far." Jake looked at me, not fully understanding. But he nodded. And me. I knew one thing very clearly. Vanessa Crowley thought she was hunting. What she didn't realize was that she had just stepped into a trap. 3 days after that video, I didn't receive one letter. I received 3. All stamped official. All carrying the same message. We were under investigation. Just one word. But repeated enough times, it can destroy a business. Jake read through each one, his voice tightening with every line. County zoning, Department of Agriculture, and now insurance too? He looked at me, frustration written all over his face. She's calling everyone. I nodded slowly. Yeah? It wasn't surprise. It was confirmation. Vanessa had moved to the next phase. No more words. No more videos. Now it was the system. In the days that followed, my ranch wasn't quiet anymore. Not because of noise, but because of the calls. My staff spent more time answering phones than tending livestock. I had to stop mid-task to respond to questions, provide documents, confirm compliance. Everything was legal, but proving it took time, took energy, and that was exactly her goal. One afternoon, Marcus called me. He ran the barbecue truck that had been working with me for nearly 3 years. His voice wasn't as easygoing as usual. Daniel. I just got a call. I already knew. Vanessa? A pause. Yeah. I closed my eyes for a second. What did she say? Marcus exhaled heavily. She said working with your ranch could expose me to legal risk. Then she called my commissary kitchen too, asking about my permits. My hand tightened, not from surprise, but because she had crossed a line. Marcus, everything is fully compliant, I said. You know that. I do, he said quickly. But Daniel, I've got a family. I can't take the risk if this escalates. The air went heavy. I understood. This wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about who could endure the pressure longer. I understand, I said slowly. Marcus stayed quiet for a few seconds. I'm sorry, Daniel. I have to pause our partnership for now. The call ended. Jake had heard everything. He stepped forward, his voice almost exploding. See? This isn't a game anymore. I know. We're losing money, losing partners, and you still want to wait. I looked at him. He reminded me of myself when I was younger, fast, hot, ready to strike back. But war isn't always won with speed. Jake, I said, my voice low but firm, if you fire before you see your target clearly, you're just wasting bullets. He went quiet, but his eyes were still burning. I'm not afraid of confrontation, I continued. But I don't fight on ground they choose. Jake frowned. Then what are you going to do? I turned and walked into the office, opened a drawer, pulled out an old folder. Dust lifted slightly as I set it on the table. Jake looked down at it. What is this? Land records, I said. Maps, permits, ownership history. He flipped through the pages. His expression began to change. How long have you had this? Longer than you think. I looked at the papers, yellowed with time. My father wasn't a man who talked much, but he prepared. Always. I've seen people like Vanessa before, I said. Not in how they talk, in how they operate. Jake looked at me. You knew she would do this? I know the type, I said. They don't look for what's right. They look for what wins. I closed the folder. And when they can't win, they try to make you quit. Silence settled in. Outside, the wind moved through the fence, making that familiar sound. Jake leaned back against the table. So you're not quitting? I looked out the window. This land wasn't just land. It was time. Blood. A promise. I'm not quitting, I said. Then I turned back, my expression calm but cold. I'm going to make her wish she never started. Jake looked at me, and for the first time, there was no doubt in his eyes. Only anticipation. And me. I knew one thing very clearly. Vanessa Crowley thought she was tightening the pressure, but she didn't realize she had just touched something I had been preparing to defend for a very long time. The call from the insurance company came just before noon, and it took less than 30 seconds for me to realize everything had crossed a line. We need to verify some information regarding your operations, the representative said, polite but cold. We've received a report that there may be ongoing violations. A report, not a routine check, not a standard verification. A report. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes fixed on the window, where sunlight was spreading across the familiar wooden fence. A report from who? I asked. A pause. We're not able to disclose the source. I gave a slight nod, even though they couldn't see it. I understand. But I knew. Vanessa wasn't just causing trouble anymore. She was trying to cut off my oxygen. After the call, Jake walked in. One look at my face, and he already knew. What now? Insurance. He cursed under his breath, pacing like he wanted to smash something. All right, that's it. We can't let this keep going. I know. No, you don't, Jake said, his voice sharper now. If they cancel our coverage, we can't run events. No events. We're done. I looked at him. For the first time, I saw real worry in his eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. And that made the decision for me. I'm going to see a lawyer, I said. Jake froze for a second. Finally, I'm not looking for someone to react, I said slowly. I'm looking for someone to end this. That afternoon, I drove out to a small office just outside town. No big sign. Nothing fancy. Just a simple brick building, the glass door worn slightly with time. But the person inside was anything but simple. Rebecca Hale. She didn't stand when I walked in. Just looked up from her desk, eyes sharp as a blade. Mr. Brooks, I hear you understand land law and HOAs. I understand the law, she said. And HOAs, I understand how they think they understand the law. I set the folder down on her desk. She opened it, flipped through each page, said nothing. No rush, just reading. 10 minutes passed in silence. Finally, she closed it. There is no legal connection, she said. Not now. Not in the past. Not in any way. I nodded. I know. But you didn't come here to hear what you already know, she said. I looked at her. She's making it harder for me to operate. Calling insurance. Calling partners. Filing complaints everywhere. 2. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. She's not trying to win. I looked at her. She's trying to exhaust you. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, that's called vexatious harassment, she said. Using process as punishment. She opened a drawer and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Have you been documenting everything? I started. Not enough, she said. I need all of it. Dates, times, content, who called, who was affected, how much money you lost. I stayed silent. This isn't about defense anymore, she continued. If you want to stop her, you have to make her the one on defense. I sat up straighter. What do you suggest? Rebecca looked straight at me. Tortious interference. I didn't answer right away. She explained. If she interferes with your business relationships without legal basis, she can be sued. And not just the HOA, her personally. Jake would like that. Me. I considered it. Do we have enough? I asked. Rebecca shook her head. Not yet. Then when? She gave a slight smile. When she goes too far. I let out a quiet chuckle. She's already gone pretty far. Rebecca tilted her head. You'd be surprised how far people like that can go. A brief silence. Then she continued, her voice lower. And usually, they're not doing it just for principle. I looked at her. What do you mean? Rebecca tapped her fingers lightly on the desk. People who push this hard usually have a deeper motive. Something shifted in my mind. Not clear, but enough to catch my attention. What do you think she wants? Rebecca gave a small shrug. I don't guess. I find out. She pushed the folder back toward me. You keep documenting everything. I'll dig deeper. I stood up. And when you find it? Rebecca looked at me, her eyes steady and cold. We won't just stop her. She paused for a beat. We'll make her take herself down. I stepped out of the office, the afternoon sunlight hitting my eyes. The wind moved across the long dirt road ahead. And for the first time, I wasn't just defending anymore. Vanessa Crowley thought she was slowly squeezing the life out of me. What she didn't know was that I had just found someone who could teach me how to squeeze back. 3 weeks later, every single complaint had been dismissed, one by one. No noise, no drama, just cold notices from the authorities, no violation, no basis, no further action. But that didn't make Vanessa stop. It made her more dangerous. Jake slammed the stack of papers onto the table, the sound sharp enough to cut through the air. So that's it, right? They cleared everything. I shook my head. No. Jake frowned. That's not enough for you? I see that she hasn't stopped. Jake went quiet, then let out a long breath. So what's next? What does she even have left to use? I looked out the window. The wind moved through the tall grass, creating soft waves. Peaceful, almost unreal, if you didn't know what was happening underneath. Pressure, I said. Jake looked at me, waiting. When people can't win through the law, they switch to pressure. And that was exactly what happened. The following week, Vanessa showed up at a county council meeting. No invitation, no prior notice. She stood at the microphone, dressed perfectly, her voice smooth and controlled, and began telling her story. Not the truth. The version she wanted people to believe. We are a family community, she said. We just want to protect a quiet, safe environment for our children. Every word carefully chosen. Every sentence constructed. She didn't attack me directly. She created an image. And in that image, I was the problem. I found out that same night when someone I knew called me. Daniel, you should know, she just presented your ranch to the council. I wasn't surprised. I just listened. She had documents, numbers, charts, talking about noise, traffic, community impact. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Thank you. The call ended. Jake was nearby. He had heard enough. She's pulling the government in. Yeah, we need to respond. I will, but not the way Jake thought. The next morning, I went back to Rebecca's office. She already had files laid out on her desk, like she knew I was coming. I'm guessing she moved up another level, she said. To the county council, Rebecca gave a small nod. Typical. I sat down. What can they do? If they believe her, Rebecca said. They can request a review of your permits, increase administrative pressure, slow down your operations. So still wearing us down. Exactly. I leaned back in my chair. So what do we do? Rebecca looked at me for a moment. She didn't answer right away. Then she opened a new file. We're not just defending anymore, she said. We start going on the offensive. I leaned forward. How? She flipped a page and slid it toward me. Do you know if her HOA has conflict of interest rules? I looked down. Yes. And do you know that board members are required to disclose any related financial interests? I looked up. You're saying? Rebecca didn't answer directly. People like Vanessa rarely act just on principle, she said. They usually have something to gain. I felt it again. That familiar shift. Like a missing piece waiting to fall into place. Have you found anything yet? I asked. Rebecca gave a slight smile. Not enough to use, she said. But enough to know we need to dig deeper. She closed the file. In the meantime, you keep doing what you've been doing. You mean, document everything, she said. Every call, every letter, every loss. I nodded. And most importantly, she looked straight at me. Don't react emotionally. I let out a small laugh. I learned that a long time ago. Rebecca tilted her head. I figured. A brief silence. Then she added, her voice slower. You served in the military, didn't you? I looked at her. Not surprised, but I didn't answer right away. The way you handle this, she continued. You don't react. You observe. You wait. I stood up. In some fights, I said, the one who wins isn't the one who shoots first. Rebecca nodded. It's the one who chooses the right moment. I stepped outside, the morning light stretching across the familiar dirt road. The wind moved gently. Everything looked normal. But beneath that normal, things were shifting. Vanessa Crowley thought she was controlling the narrative, applying pressure, driving the game. What she didn't know was that we had started digging, and when we found what she was hiding, this game would be over. Rebecca called me late one afternoon. Her voice wasn't louder than usual, but there was something in the way she spoke that made me stop everything immediately. I think you should come down here, she said. No explanation, no small talk. I got in the truck. The road to her office felt longer than usual. Not because of distance, but because I knew, if Rebecca called like that, she had found something big. When I walked in, she was already standing by her desk, stacks of documents spread out in front of her. Not one file. Several. I found the reason, she said. No greeting, no build-up. Straight to the point. I stepped closer. Show me. Rebecca slid a document toward me. Corporate records. A company name I had never heard before. Silver Ridge Development Group. A real estate company, she said. Registered 3 years ago. I flipped the page. List of shareholders. One name abbreviated. VC. I looked up. Rebecca nodded. Vanessa Crowley. The air in the room seemed to thicken. I looked back down. Not just a name, a signature. Legal filings. Proof. There's more, Rebecca said. She pulled another file forward. This is a development application. I read. A new residential project, located directly across the road, facing my ranch. I kept flipping. A traffic study. Numbers. Projections. And then I saw it. A single line. Small, but clear. The project is calculated based on the assumption that the opposing property will no longer operate commercially. I stopped. I didn't need to read further. I understood. I looked up at Rebecca. She needs me gone. Rebecca didn't answer. She didn't have to. The answer was on the table. Every letter. Every call. Every complaint. Not random. Not principle. Money. What would Jake say if he saw this? No, Jake would explode. Me. I just felt cold. A familiar kind of cold. Like before a fight where you know the other side isn't playing by the rules. Did she disclose any of this? I asked. Rebecca shook her head. Not in any HOA documents. Not in meetings. Not when she filed complaints. Conflict of interest. Exactly. I let out a quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, but because everything finally made sense. She's not just attacking, I said. She's clearing the path. Rebecca crossed her arms. And, using the HOA as the tool, silence settled in. I took a step back, looking at the entire spread of documents on the table. How many people believed her? How many thought she was protecting the community? When in reality, she was protecting her investment. Do we have enough? I asked. Rebecca looked at me. This time, she didn't hesitate. We have more than enough. She pulled out another file. This is the draft complaint, she said. Tortious interference, conflict of interest, misrepresentation in project filings. I looked at it. Her name. Clear. No longer the HOA. Personnel. I want to do this right, I said. Rebecca nodded. We're not going to rush. I don't just want to win, I continued. I want to end this. Rebecca gave a slight smile. Then we need a stage. I looked at her. A stage? A place where everything happens at once, she said. Evidence, witnesses, public. I immediately thought of it. An event. A place Vanessa wouldn't be able to resist showing up. Harvest Festival, I said. Rebecca nodded. Exactly. A brief silence. Then I said, she'll come. She has to, Rebecca replied. People like her don't miss a chance to control. I looked out the window. The sky was getting darker. Street lights were starting to come on. Everything was still quiet. But underneath, the storm had already formed. I want her to walk into it herself, I said. Rebecca tilted her head. She'll think it's her win. I nodded. And that will be her biggest mistake. Rebecca closed the file. Then we start preparing. I turned and walked out of the office. The air was cooler, the night deeper, but my mind clearer than ever. Vanessa Crowley thought she was playing a long game, thought she had calculated every move. What she didn't know was that her entire plan had just become evidence. And this time, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was setting the trap, and she had already stepped into it. For the next 6 weeks, I almost disappeared from every argument. No responses, no posts, no appearances anywhere Vanessa could see me react. And that made her believe she was winning. Jake couldn't stand it. How long are you going to stay quiet? He asked, his voice tight like a spring about to snap. Until everything is ready, I answered. Do you see what she's doing? She's telling the whole neighborhood we're about to get shut down. I know. And you're just letting it happen? I looked at him. No, I said. I'm preparing. Jake didn't say anything else. But his eyes showed. He still didn't fully understand. As for me, I didn't need anyone to understand right now. I needed everything in place. Rebecca worked like a machine. No noise, no show. But every time I stepped into her office, there was another layer of evidence. Emails, records, meeting notes, legal documents. We filed information requests with the authorities. What came back was more than I expected. An email, sent from a personal account, addressed to the county planning department. The content, a request to review my ranch's operating permits, citing community concerns. No HOA signature. No official capacity. Just one name, Vanessa Crowley. She had been applying pressure from behind the scenes. Not public, not transparent, and most importantly, not disclosed. Rebecca placed a printed copy of the email in front of me. "This is what will bring her down," she said. I read it again, not to understand, to feel it. She wasn't just attacking from the outside. She had slipped into the system and thought no one would notice. "Do we have enough?" I asked. Rebecca looked at me. "Certain. We have more than enough." But we still didn't act. We kept preparing. Every detail, every scenario, every response. I started documenting everything. Not just paperwork, time, impact, loss. One partner pulled out. One contract delayed. 1 week of sharply reduced revenue. Each small number, building into a larger picture. Jake started to understand. One evening, he sat across from me, no longer as tense as before. "You're building a case," he said. I nodded. "And when it's big enough, we don't need to shout," I said. "We just need to set it down." Jake nodded slowly. For the first time, he didn't ask anything else. Meanwhile, across the road, Vanessa began to change. No longer just letters and complaints. She started holding HOA meetings, bringing charts, numbers, and her version of the story. An old neighbor of mine, Mr. Harris, called me one morning. "I think you should know. She's talking about you in those meetings." I figured. "It's not just about noise," he said. "She's saying your ranch is attracting people who don't fit the community." I stayed silent. One short sentence, but enough to reveal the truth. Not law, not regulation, control. "Is anyone pushing back?" I asked. "Some," Mr. Harris said. "But not many. People. They're not sure." I understood. When information gets twisted long enough, it starts to feel like truth. And that's why I couldn't rush. We needed a moment. A place where everything couldn't be twisted. And we had it. The Harvest Festival. The biggest event of the year. 150 guests. Live music. Food. Lights. And this time, more than that. Rebecca arranged everything. We invited local officials. Invited local press. Even notified law enforcement properly, by the book. Everything was legal. No gaps. No mistakes. Jake looked at the preparation list, then at me. "You're turning this event into a stage." I nodded. "And she'll come." "You sure?" I looked at him. "People like her can't resist control." Jake gave a slight smile. "So, we're inviting her in." "No," I said. I looked out toward the fence, where lights were being installed one by one. "We're letting her walk in." A breeze moved through, carrying the smell of dirt and grass. Everything looked normal, quiet. But underneath, everything was ready. Vanessa Crowley thought she was getting closer to winning. What she didn't know, every step she took, was leading her exactly where I wanted. And this time, there was no way back. Vanessa didn't come alone. She walked into my ranch with a lawyer, 2 HOA board members, and a kind of confidence that said today was the day she would end everything. What she didn't know was that today was the day everything started to fall apart. String lights along the fence came alive as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was warm, filled with laughter, the smell of grilled meat drifting across the property. 150 people moved between booths, drinks in hand, live music playing steadily in the background. Everything was perfect. No chaos, No violations. Nothing like the story Vanessa had been telling. Jake stood beside me, scanning the scene. She's not going to like this. I know. 2 police cars were parked near the entrance. No sirens, no lights, just presence. They had checked permits, reviewed documents, and they stayed. Not to intervene, but to observe. Right then, Jake spoke quietly. She's here. I turned. Vanessa walked through the gate like she owned the place. White dress, perfect hair. Her eyes swept across the crowd, then stopped at the officers. A beat. Just one. But enough for me to see. She didn't expect this. She kept walking, her lawyer close beside her, whispering something. The 2 HOA members followed, their confidence not as solid as before. Vanessa came straight toward me. No greeting, no hesitation. Mr. Brooks, she said, her voice slightly higher than usual. I'm here to document violations. I know, I said, cutting her off gently. I stepped aside. But before you begin, I have something you should see. Rebecca appeared next to me. She didn't raise her voice, didn't apply pressure. She simply handed a file to Vanessa's lawyer. This is a complaint, she said. It has been filed with the county court. The lawyer took it and opened it. The atmosphere shifted instantly. This was no longer an event. It was a moment. Vanessa turned. What is that? The lawyer didn't answer right away. He kept reading. His face barely changed, but his eyes did. Rebecca continued. We also want to make sure the county representatives here are aware of certain information. She turned slightly. A woman stepped forward. Simple attire, sharp eyes. A representative from the county planning department. We have received documentation, Rebecca said, regarding the development project across from this ranch. Vanessa stood still. I could see it clearly. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Rebecca didn't stop. Specifically, that an HOA board member, who is also a shareholder in that development company, failed to disclose a conflict of interest while filing complaints aimed at shutting down this ranch. The sound around us seemed to drop. The music was still playing, but no one was listening. Everyone was watching. Vanessa shook her head slightly. That's a misunderstanding. No, Rebecca said. That's public record. Vanessa's lawyer leaned in, whispering into her ear. Her expression changed. No more control. No more certainty. Just realization. Jake stood beside me, barely breathing. One of the officers stepped forward, his voice calm. Ma'am, we've checked everything. This operation is fully compliant. There are no violations. Vanessa turned to him. You don't see what's happening here. The officer looked at her. We see a lawful event. One sentence. Short. Enough to dismantle everything she had built. The crowd began to murmur. A few HOA members stepped back. No one spoke, but everyone understood. Vanessa stood under the lights, surrounded by the very people she had tried to convince, facing a truth she couldn't deny. I stepped closer. No threat. No anger. Just enough for her to hear. You thought this was about regulations. I paused for a beat, but it was always about the truth. She looked at me. No smile. No power. Just one thing left. A mistake. Her lawyer touched her arm lightly. They turned. No statement. No explanation. They just walked away. The reporter's camera kept recording everything. Not the way Vanessa planned, but in a way she could no longer control. Jake let out a breath. So that's it? I watched the car as it drove away. Not yet, I said. But inside, I knew she had just lost everything. And this time, there was no getting it back. 3 days after that event, the story showed up on the local news, not the way Vanessa wanted. No violations. No threat to the community. Just a simple headline, a family ranch facing off against an HOA president with a conflict of interest. And this time, the truth wasn't twisted. Jake turned the TV up louder than usual. You need to see this. I stood behind him, arms crossed, watching my ranch on the screen. The warm yellow lights, the guests, the music, and then Vanessa walking away, her face no longer able to hide the cracks. The reporter spoke slowly, clearly. Documents show that the HOA president has ties to a real estate project that depends on shutting down this ranch. Jake looked at me, half smiling. That's the polite way of saying she got exposed. I didn't smile. I just watched. Not out of satisfaction. Because I knew this wasn't completely over. A week later, Vanessa resigned. No press conference. No explanation. Just an email sent to all residents of Silver Creek Estates, citing personal reasons and new professional commitments. Jake read it and laughed. Personal reasons. I stayed quiet. People like her never admit they were wrong. They just step away. But this time, she didn't just lose her position. She lost control. 2 weeks later, the HOA's lawyer contacted Rebecca. They wanted to negotiate. No more threats. No more rigid letters. Just a simple question. How can we resolve this? I met Rebecca in her office. She placed a proposal on the table. This is what they're offering, she said. I read through it. Financial compensation. Withdrawal of all complaints. A commitment not to interfere in the future. A number clearly stated. Not small. Jake would call it a win. But I didn't see it that way. What do you think? Rebecca asked. I set the paper down. Will Marcus come back? Rebecca nodded. I spoke with him. He just needs stability. I nodded slowly. Then it's fine. Not because of the money. Because it ends here. In December, we signed the agreement. No noise. No publicity. Just a full stop. In January the following year, the project across from the ranch was withdrawn. No major announcement. No explanation. It just disappeared. Like it had never existed. One afternoon, I stood alone out in the field, cold wind moving along the fence. The sun was low, the light long and soft. Jake walked up, holding 2 cups of coffee. You won, he said. I took the cup, but didn't drink. No, I said. Jake frowned. No? I kept what was mine, I said. That's not winning. That's responsibility. Jake stayed quiet. I looked out into the distance. The land was still there. The way it had always been. Before Vanessa. After Vanessa. Your father would be proud, Jake said softly. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, feeling the wind, the soil, the weight of time. He wouldn't be surprised, I said. A long silence. Then Jake gave a small smile. You know, at first I thought you were slow. I looked at him. And now? Now I think you were leading them exactly where you wanted. I smiled. That's the difference. Jake nodded. We stood there a while longer, saying nothing. We didn't need to. Because everything was clear. People like Vanessa think power comes from controlling others, but they forget something. Real power comes from controlling yourself. Patience. Observation. Waiting for the right moment. And when that moment comes, no need to shout. No need to argue. Just the truth. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, a Karen, or anyone who uses rules as a weapon to push you back, you understand that feeling. They don't need to win. They just need you to get tired enough to quit. Don't give them that. Know your rights. Document everything. And most importantly, don't react. Prepare. If you've ever been through something like this, share your story. I read every one. And sometimes, your story becomes the next one. And if you believe people like Vanessa shouldn't win, stay with me. Because there are many more stories like this.